It's Reality Check with Craig Price.
I'm an idiot.
4 minutes in and I'm already wrong.
I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me. Craig, shut up.
Hey, I need you guys to do these things.
I'm Craig Price, professional bastard. Nice to meet you. Welcome to Reality Check with Craig Price. I am your host, Craig Price. This week, Patti joins the podcast to talk about the single most important aspect in the speaking profession, your voice. That's the royal your, not specifically you, Seth, in New Jersey. If the voice is an instrument, mine would be an old harmonica. Easy to use, doesn't always sound good, and wildly inappropriate most of the time, but it is important. I didn't really understand how important it was until about a year and a half ago when I guess it was around episode 22 or so, and I recorded 10 interviews in a 3-day period during the National Speaker Association convention in Anaheim. If you listen to those podcasts, I think it's around 22 to 26. If you listen to those, you can hear the gradual progression of my voice get froggier and froggier. But let's be honest. Not only was I talking all day, I was with a group of people who A, never shut up, and B, never stop asking questions. So I did a lot of talking in that 3-day period, and I really strained the voice. And because I'm not really used to that much talking, your voice is so important. Not only do you need to know how to take care of it, as I was chastised by a fellow speaker how I should be able to talk nonstop forever and never have a voice problem, but you need to know how to use your voice effectively in life. And that is why Patti is here to talk about how to control your voice and why it's important, even if you don't speak for a profession. Are you on the mailing list yet? It's now weekly, so mostly because I want you to know when the podcast is out, but also Reality Check is really about learning things you might not otherwise have stumbled upon. Like when we used to read the newspaper. Used to learn a lot more when we read newspapers because you were forced to turn the page and look at the articles, and things that you would not have looked at before were there. You had to skim by them at least. Now we go to specialized websites that only talk about topics that we like, and so we miss a lot of these stories, a lot of things that we normally wouldn't know about. And that's what Reality Check is. I cover so many different topics that a weekly reminder with a preview lets you decide if you want to hear that particular show. Because I am a reality-based person, I know that not every show is going to be for every person. Yes, I would love you to listen every week. And most of you do, and I really appreciate that. But if you can't, the newsletter really helps you listen to the podcasts you want to hear. So head on over to realitycheckpodcast.com, sign up, and that's pretty much it. Never miss another episode that you want to hear, because every week, every Tuesday, you will get an email with a preview, and it tells you who's on the show, what they're going to be talking about, and links to how you can listen. You can also follow us on Twitter at RealityCheckPod. You can head over to iTunes, please, and leave a rating. Even better, leave a review. It really helps the show, and I would love the help. I really would. So head on over to iTunes. But enough begging, cajoling. That kind of mindset shows you how bad a marketer I am. But let's listen to vocal expert Patti. Now, my voice has been fine. I'm coming over a little cold, so, obviously there's outside things that can affect your voice, and you can do your best to try to avoid them. But you talk about how important your voice is to meet your life needs, which for me, it doesn't seem, as a professional speaker, it seems weird because that's all I do is talk. So it seems weird that I would need to adjust my voice drastically to fit my life needs. So explain that a little bit.
Sure. Well, when you talk to somebody, for example, you're talking to your wife and she says, "Honey, take the garbage out." You say, "Oh, I really don't feel like it now. I'll do it later." Or you're at work and the boss says, "Have you finished that assignment we talked about?" And you say, "Well, you see, sir, I was really busy over the weekend." Or you're at a football game and you're screaming for your son, "It's a touchdown." You're using your voice in so many different ways with different pitches and tone, articulation, breathing, resonance, projection. All of those things and they all get together to make a great presentation of who you are as a person. So that's really what it's all about. It varies depending on who you're talking to, the time of day, how you feel, all kinds of different things.
Well, that's the natural progression of a voice. So, anyways, because I mean, when I think of a voice professor, and I am here with Bill Patti, your voice professor, not mine, yourvoiceprofessor.com. When I think of using your voice, I'm not trained in any way to use my voice, even though that's all I do. I make a living talking to folks, and I make a living speaking. My voice has never been trained, I guess, professionally. I took a class in college for an acting, and they did voice, and it was all from the diaphragm and things like that. It seemed like I would never use it unless I was in a theater speaking to several hundred people without a microphone. So when you talk about using your voice differently than your everyday voice, using it to command respect, what are some of the mistakes that people make?
Well, when you talk about the diaphragm and the proper breathing and all of that, that is critical. It doesn't matter, who you're talking to or what you're talking about. If you learn to talk the correct way, if you learn to present yourself the correct way, you'll speak like that all the time. And the reality is, when I'm saying projection, resonance, and all of that, I'm talking about a real power in your voice that you can use all the time. Obviously, there are ways to pull it back and get very soft. Now I'm talking to my children. Hi, kids. Oh, you had a great day. Fantastic. I'm at about 15% of the air that I need now. But then when I need to project and really get excited, I'm at a 100%. So it's about total control of your voice. If you have total control, you will have total control of the listener. You will know how to make those pauses, how to take that, to increase the volume when you speak at a certain point, when there's an important point that you're giving when you give a presentation. And you'll say, now listen carefully, this is very important, and I'm going to repeat it again for you, so write it down. This is important that you vary your pitch, your tone, the way you have volume in the way you speak, because people get bored easily. We are a society today of technology. People are constantly moving from the cell phone to their iPads, iPods, whatever the heck, they got something going on in their mind, and they want it fast. They want video. They want visual. They want stimulation. That's why, of course, movies have this tremendous amount of action all the time in them, because people don't want to sit through a love story anymore. No, that's too boring. I want some real action. I want to see computer graphics. They want to be excited. They want to be moving. They want their life to feel like it's on fire most of the time. And that's why your voice, if you're, for example, a salesperson, or you're on the telephone for your company, or you're selling something on the phone or in person, or you're even the receptionist at the office, how your voice is used is critical to your success as an employee, your success as a person, and the success of the business you work for. So if you start thinking of your voice as a tool, and I always say, unleash the power of your voice. And really, your voice has tremendous power. It can motivate people to do something that you want them to do, even though they don't want to do it. That's what selling is all about. That's what being a great charismatic character is all about. That's how you get attention when you walk into a room. A big booming voice sure can grab some attention. Now, I'm not saying you're going to talk like that all the time. You have to save it for the right moments. You have to know how to vary that type of volume and vary the pauses and make your pitch and tone so that you're talking conversationally. People are interested in what you have to say. They're getting the message, because it's 87% how we say things, 13% what we're saying. I repeat that again. 87% of what we say in a speech, and President Obama just finished his inaugural address. And you know what? Nobody remembers exactly what he said, but they do remember how he said it. And that's the critical thing. They always come up with one catchphrase from an inaugural address that they repeat over and over if it's really memorable. But other than that, we don't remember anything other than, wow, he's a great speaker. I really love to listen to him talk. That's what this is about.
Well, let's get down to some basics, because I don't think anyone is ever taught how to breathe. I mean, it's pretty much the doctor slaps you on the butt when you come out and you start. And very rarely does anybody get told how to correct unless they're, gasping for breath or they're breathing too loud. I can't imagine in a situation, unless it's a medical condition, where you are taught to breathe. But breathing is important. So what is the proper way to breathe, and how can we, as I'm 40 years old, how am I supposed to change old dogs to new tricks kind of situation? How am I going to learn how to breathe properly?
Well, it depends on how you were raised in some cases, the type of people you heard in your life.
A lot of screaming and yelling. So I have
screaming and yelling. You've got good lungs, probably got good projection, but that isn't something you want to use all the time, obviously, because you have to be subtle too. But I'm really talking about 3 types of delivery when it comes to breathing. And obviously we're talking about diaphragm is the ideal way to breathe. And people say, what's a diaphragm? Well, it's a sheet of muscle around the midsection of your stomach that gives you the power to really deliver great speeches and great singing, because that's all the same process. So diaphragm breathing is the way to go. But if you don't know where the diaphragm is, well, we can teach you where it is. We can teach you how to do exercises that tell you where it is so you can feel it when it happens. For example, if you are becoming Santa Claus for a moment, we're going to say together, hoo, 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 and bounce our stomach when we say it, and see it bouncing. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Try that, Craig.
Well, actually, I've already got a stomach that bounces when I speak.
Okay. But you get the idea.
Yeah.
Did you see your stomach bounce a little bit there?
Like I said, it typically bounces whenever I breathe in and out. Anyways, I need to go on a diet.
Yeah. The fact is, but you're probably using your diaphragm. That's where, because even when you're just talking, there's a little push in that diaphragm to grab that air, bring it up, and that's the process that gives you a lot of force and resonance and projection in your voice. However, there are some people that talk like Snooki. Snooki talks like this, right through her nose. She loves to talk. And Fran Drescher, that lady was on The Nanny?
Yeah.
She made a living now because she talks through her nose. But this is not the way to talk, because you get no power in your voice. This is as loud as I can talk, because I can't talk any louder pushing air through my nose.
Well,
then we have one more way to talk, and that's...
Well, I was going to say, let's be honest. The way Fran Drescher talks, only one person can make money doing that.
Yeah, well, that's true. But there's usually a few. Lily Tomlin did it years ago on Laugh-In, if you're that old enough to remember Laugh-In, where she was the operator.
Yeah, but that was a character. That was
a character. But and Carol Burnett did it, Mrs. Tudball, if you recall that program. They do it for humor too. But there are people that spend their entire lives talking through their nose. And it does drive me nutty. And I see them on television. I see them in person. And I'd like to just say, give me an hour, and I'll change the way you sound. You will sound like a real person, not just this character impression kind of person, a characterization. Also, the other type you want to avoid is people who talk through their throat. Right here, there are people who sound like Don Knotts. Andy, that's the way they sound, because they're pushing all the air right through their throat. And this is not the way to talk. Again, no power in your voice. You have no ability to really talk well and sound well. You want resonance. And the way you get resonance, and you can hear the difference in my voice as I changed back to diaphragm, is that you get quality. It's all about quality. People respond to a great voice. They have no choice. I'll give you a quick story, very quick.
Go for
There's
it.
One of my favorite television programs that's on right now on PBS is called The Pioneers of Television. Now, I don't know if you've seen this show. It goes back into history and looks at some of the great television performers and shows of all time, and each week it takes a different segment. Well, they did it last season, and they had this fantastic announcer on this show. He had a voice that was dripping. It was just so fantastic. I didn't know who he was, but when he would close that show, he did it with such force, with such passion, with such a great voice, that I actually got chills. I'm sorry, that's the kind of person I am. I got chills listening to this guy close the show. The pioneers of television. I can't even get down there where he is because he did it that well. Well, this year, they changed the narrator. They decided to hire a guy with a name, Ryan Seacrest. I didn't know it was Seacrest on the other night. And I'm listening. Who is this guy? I don't like his voice. Where's the old voice? I want to hear him. That's what's special about the presentation. That announcer really could sell it. Seacrest doesn't have that kind of voice. He was hired because he is Brian Seacrest. He's got some name recognition. So that's how powerful the voice can be if you're breathing right, if you're doing all the basic elements of voice and speech skill training that makes you stand out from the crowd.
So give me one example, because I don't want you to divulge all your secrets, obviously, but give me one example of an exercise we can do at home to practice breathing properly, because I understand the reason why and why it's so important, but it may not be something that someone can just easily go, oh, I need to start doing it this way. So an exercise that might be useful.
One of the big problems today is a thing called Glottal Fry. As a matter of fact, they say a lot of college-age women, particularly upper-income type women, are speaking with a glottal fry, and that means at the end of a sentence, they kind of run out of air. So when they get to the end of a sentence, it's kind of like this. But they're doing it in a way that's kind of cool. They think it's a cool way to speak, and women are starting to copy each other, which happens, and now we have this epidemic of college campus women who are all sounding alike with a glottal fry, meaning they run out of air. But you don't want to run out of air in the middle of a sentence. You want to have that full flow of breathing throughout an entire thought so you don't sound kind of dumb at the end where you get like that. And that's really important to do in the breathing process. So one way we do it in exercises, and we develop the ability to have a sustaining breath, one breath, when we have a sentence, is we say the days of the week or the months of the year or numbers in a row, and we time ourselves. And we try to do about 30 seconds on one breath. It's kind of like holding your breath, but you're actually speaking. And you want to have the quality of your voice continue. So, for example, if we were going to say, we're going to do the days of the week in a row for 30 seconds. So it's just deep breath, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and continue as long as you can. Building yourself. Some people can't do more than 15 seconds the first time, maybe 20. Then they build it up to 30, 40 seconds. Now we have more power. We have more control of the breath. It's all about how much air we're letting out of our mouth at one time to make those sounds, and the longer we can sustain it, the more we can say on one breath. It gives us complete control. Now, some people would say, well, so I took a breath here, I took a breath there. It makes your whole sound disjointed.
Because it sounds like my friend Dylan, when I was a kid, you'd give him a quarter and he could belch the alphabet in one deal. So
yeah,
it's very similar, but what you're doing sounds more eloquent. But it's trying to breathe for that 30 seconds, say as much as you can, or say something consistently over and over again for 30 seconds.
Or if you like, you can put, just to get a Kleenex, a Kleenex on the wall, hold it with one hand, and then a deep breath, and blow on the Kleenex for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. How long can you hold that note? Singers use this as a training tool to hold that long last note. Have you ever noticed some singers can hold the note forever? How do they do that? They do that by letting just a little bit of air out at a time, but still maintaining the volume, the projection. That takes training and practice. So the more you practice with that Kleenex on the wall and blowing on that Kleenex, you're going to have more air, and you'll find that this also is a good indicator if you've got lung problems. When I go do a speech, I stand everybody in the room up, and we do the Monday through Sunday exercise. And the last person standing, I say, is usually an athlete, somebody who's, running or walking, exercising every day, because they've developed their lungs better. As a matter of fact, there's a place not far from my home that I did a Rotary Club speech not long ago, and believe it or not, out of 100 people in the audience, the gentleman that won was the oldest mayor in the United States. He's 96 years old, but he had enough breath to beat out all the rest of the younger people in the room, because he's in that kind of physical condition. So in addition to learning how to control your breath, it's a great way to know if you have good lungs, good breathing control, and kind of your longevity factor as well.
We'll move on from the physical to the more mental, and that's definitely going to be things like articulation and enunciation. How important is that? Because I would think that it sets a level of credibility by how you enunciate words and how you use them properly.
Absolutely. Words are power. And that goes for writing, because I will judge you as a person based on your spelling skills. And today, spelling skills are the worst, because I don't think we're really taking the time in schools to learn spelling like we used to. So people will tend to misspell words. And that tells me a lot about you. I tend to think you're not quite as educated, perhaps, as I would like to work with, if you're misspelling things and you got spell check on your computer and you didn't use it. And same thing with speaking. Can you articulate words? Can you get out that last syllable, the last consonant? Right there. There's a good word. Consonant. Got to get that T out at the end. Did you do it? Did you move your tongue in the right position to hit that consonant T? That's important. That's what I'm talking about. Go to McDonald's, go to the drive-thru window anywhere in America, and try to understand what the person on the speaker is telling you. Impossible. Why? Because young people have never been trained to open their mouth. Articulation is about moving your jaw, your tongue, your soft palate. Everything in your mouth works in conjunction with your brain. Now, your brain is going at supersonic speed, and it wants to say all those things fast, but you have to control it. Use a lot of finesse. Do not speak too quickly, and do not mumble. Those are the two big problems in the United States, mumbling and fast speech. So that's what really makes things so jumbled. When you listen to a young person today, they tend not to be understandable. When you ask them their name, they say their name, and you have no idea what they just said because they don't open their mouth. They don't enunciate. They're not proud of who they are. So if they haven't been trained, if their parents haven't worked with them, this is a problem.
Also, it's definitely this talking fast, the mumbling, and they don't ever look. They don't look up, but I don't see their lips move. I mean, there's a couple news correspondents that I watch. They're not. It's local, but they sound fine, but their lips literally do not move enough for you to figure out what they're saying. If there's any conflict, if you don't know if you hear them and you mishear a word, you're not going to be able to pick it up with the hint of the lips because their mouth literally doesn't move.
Just lazy speech. That's all. It's in some cases it has to do with what part of the country you're from. Now, I live in the South, where people tend to talk like this. They don't want to open their mouth because that's just too much work. I don't want to open my mouth and have to talk to you like that. I'm just going to just be very comfortable. Well, you know what? It's very difficult. I met a woman from mid-Georgia, and she was a real Southerner. And I was having difficulty, and I'm pretty good with accents, understanding what she was telling me because it is so dramatically changed when you have that kind of delivery. And it applies to other parts of the country. New York people, of course, have their own particular problem with the nasal sound. And people in New England, they have particular problems. So depending on where you are in the country, you'll have a different accent, a different sound. That can affect the way you are interpreted. That can affect the way you are perceived as a person. We haven't talked about first impressions. First impressions is one of the reasons you want to be voice-speech trained, because you have 4 to 8 seconds to make a good first impression with the person you're just meeting. 4 to 8 seconds. They're going to look you from head to toe, look at your clothes, your hair, your glasses, and they're going to listen to your voice and how you speak. If you fail in 8 seconds, bingo, you have lost your first chance. It won't come back.
Well, I mean, I certainly understand, and I'm from New England, and I've had to work hard to lose my accent because they speak so fast that they drop letters. There is no R because it's too much time. So that's ka, here, there, over there. They just zip as fast as they can. They get through. So it's a lot of what has to do with speech is a lot about pacing. Even you can be too slow and too fast. I know down south, for me, I met a lady in Georgia as well, and it took her 45 minutes to talk and say something that would have taken 45 seconds for a normal person.
Right.
So how can we figure out, because we don't know what we sound like. We talk our own way, and then we go somewhere else, and someone goes, "You have a funny accent," and you went, "You have the accent. I sound normal." Right. So if we talk fast, if we have, or we talk slow, or we have an accent that is only heard and understood by a small clique of people within a 5-mile radius, how can we identify that in ourselves? How can we figure that out?
Well, obviously, you can do what announcers do, and I've been a radio announcer my whole life, television announcer. So as a result, and I'm from upstate New York, and up in Rochester, New York, we all talk through our nose. So we don't say fog, we say fog. And so it took me a long time to get rid of that fog. I had to work hard to get to the point where I was saying fog on the air, because I don't want to sound like I'm from anywhere. That's a good way to approach it. If announcers try to sound, you might notice, like they're from anywhere. Go to any announcing place in the country, any television station, tune in Cincinnati, Cleveland, Los Angeles, you'll hear the same style of English delivered, usually by the announcer. Very rare do you hear somebody with an accent. That would be very unusual. Everybody sounds the same. Everybody looks the same. The sets all look the same. It's designed that way. You don't know what city you're in, really, because it all looks the same. And that's what announcers do. They try to train themselves so they sound like they're from the middle of the country, which would be Peoria, Illinois. That's the mid part of the country where everybody kind of speaks the King's English. No accents, accent proof. That's what you're trying to do, so that when you hear Bill Patti speak, you say, I have no idea where this guy came from. Oh, he's from Rochester, New York. I didn't realize that. But when I go back there to visit, I notice how the people sound different than I sound, because I changed the way I sound. And that happens with a lot of people. Actors do that a lot. They change the way they deliver their lines. They change the way they sound, because they don't want to sound like they're from New York. There was a guy, and I don't know how old of a gentleman you are, there was a guy on Lost in Space years ago. His name was Jonathan Harris. He was on the show, and he had this... The professor, exactly. Now, didn't he have an unusual delivery? He had a very strange sounding delivery, like he might be from, some other country or England, or he had a very unusual, where he was from?
Yeah, he had a weird English accent that was kind of like a ooh kind of thing.
He put it on. But the fact is, he was from Queens, New York. And he was made fun of when he was in school so much. He decided he was going to change the way he sounded when he went to Hollywood. And he did. And then he came up with this unusual presentation that made him stand out from the crowd. And believe it or not, he had a New York accent originally. So you can change the way you sound if you want to. It takes some work, takes some effort, but you can sound like you're from everywhere and nowhere if that's what you choose to do.
And it sounds like the best way to do that is just record yourself, and which is the worst thing. I mean, I do podcasts. We've done over, we're getting close to 80 podcasts, and I can't stand listening to myself, but it's just something you have to suck up and do if you want to eliminate some of the quirks.
Absolutely. That's a good way to do it. And, of course, with a professional who will work with you in real time to listen to what you're doing or critique what you've done and improve you. I talk with people now from all over the world on Skype, and we do internet lessons in real time. I'm talking people in Italy, people in Germany. So these people want to learn English, and they want to sound like they don't have a heavy accent. They work with me, and we change the way they speak. And it's amazing what you can do with somebody in a very short period of time and make them sound a lot better, and their presentation gets a lot better, and they have better results in their life.
Well, the last thing I want to talk to you about that affects the voice it doesn't happen to me as much as it used to, but when I first started doing stand-up, when I first started speaking, when I first started to get in front of people, stress and how you feel before you get on, it causes cotton mouth. There's things you should avoid before you even get on stage. So how can we eliminate some of the stress involved in speaking? Because that does affect, it tightens up your vocal cords. It really can cause havoc. Even if you've prepared yourself, it's the stress that can really affect your voice.
Well, the more you do it, as you know, because I'm sure you present often and you're doing these podcasts, the fact is the more you do anything, the better it's going to be for you. So if you can get in front of people and do speeches and presentations from time to time, that's a big help because you'll get over that fear. But really the fear lasts about 30 seconds to a minute. Have you ever noticed that first when they introduce you and you walk up there, and that is critical when you walk up on stage. And then you stand there and you survey these people, perhaps hundreds of people, staring at you, waiting for you to say something brilliant. Well, now we have a problem. So we're a little nervous, our heart is beating faster, our body is beginning to tense up, and that means we're going to get less oxygen. We want to make sure we take at least four deep breaths before we go up on stage so our body has more oxygen than we need. Always bring bottled water with you. Water is the only way to lubricate your vocal folds so they will stay moist because they are a mucous membrane. That's another good little trick. The other thing I do is I kind of have a rapport with certain members of the audience. If I'm sitting there for a luncheon, I'll talk to people at my table, get some information about them, their first name, and then I may have a little humorous anecdote when I met them that happened, and I bring it up during that first minute and talk about it. Relax everybody, relax myself, and then we feel this bond between us. That's my little trick. If somebody walked in the room and their shoes were yellow, I might bring that up. You never know what my mind will come up with, and that's why I survey the crowd. How old are they? Who are they? What are they talking about? What's the company that I'm dealing with? If you kind of analyze your audience and then you work it into the first part of your talk, that will relax you, them, and they'll feel like, well, this guy's pretty good. I think I'm going to listen to what he has to say.
Well, Bill, if there's someone out there that wants to learn more or even look to you to maybe get some coaching on their voice, where can they find you?
Very simple. Go to my website, yourvoiceprofessor.com, yourvoiceprofessor.com. Everything you need to know is on the website, including contact information, of course, all the information about individual classes, my presentations for business employees, and also my new 2-CD set, Presenting Your New Voice, Voice Speech Communication Skills for the 21st Century, 2 CDs, 100 minutes of information, and exercises like we talked about here during this half hour that you can buy, near $60, shipping and handling included in the USA. That will be a great way to start in your spare time, changing the way you speak and use your voice and communicate for a better you.
Well, if it can get me sounding a third as good as you, it's definitely worth it. You sound fantastic, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Craig. It's been a pleasure.
That's our show for this week. Thanks again to Bill Patti at yourvoiceprofessor.com for coming on. Always remember, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the social media, so feel free to connect and comment. If you want to reach out to me directly, Craig at speakercraigprice.com. Ask any question you like, send in suggestions, offer up guests. Craig at speakercraigprice.com. We'll see you next week.